Hello. We've been asked to share what God's been showing us in recent weeks. And as we've been talking about this, we found that God's been challenging both of us to be more aware of his presence and to see and hear him in the ordinary everyday activities of life.
Yeah, and for me, this is something that God's been developing in me over my whole life. I remember as a young Christian, I developed the practice of having a regular quiet time, which is good. But I wasn't really able to carry that sense of God's presence into what I was doing in the rest of the day. And I'd have to go back to that place to get close to God. And even friends who went on prayer walks, they was like, how on earth do you talk to God? And, you know, when you're being distracted by everything around you. Well, now I love prayer walks, but it really wasn't until I had kids, I had the twins, that I began to realise that, there's no hope if you're relying on a quiet time. It's just not going to happen. So it's all right, darling. So yeah, for me it was about having to find God then in the nappies and in the feeds and in the pushchairs and all of that goes. And it reminded me of Brother Lawrence, who worked in the kitchens of the monastery, and he said that for him there was no difference between what he did in his everyday work and in his personal devotion times. For him, everything was a conversation with God.
Yeah, I was thinking about Brother Lawrence the other day when I was chopping vegetables. He was a 17th century Carmelite brother known for his profound peace and deep relationship with God. And I'd like to quote from this book, which is a compilation of his conversations and letters. He says, "The time of business does not with me differ from the time of prayer. And in the noise and clatter of my kitchen, while several persons are at the same time calling for different things, I possess God in as great tranquility as if I were upon my knees at the Blessed Sacrament."
Yeah, that's lovely. In a book I've been reading recently, they asked the question, when do you feel close to God? And the responses that came back were things like, in the garden, watching a sunset, having a shower, playing with the kids. And the point that she makes in this is that we don't tend to identify these things as spiritual practices. And that's exactly it. We tend to divide the secular and the sacred, and actually everything that we should do should be an act of worship. Everything should be a spiritual practice. And I've really been challenged on that recently with lockdown and feeling this invasion of work into my home space. And God's saying, no, don't put things in boxes. I can speak to you as much in the spreadsheet and the email as I can in the Bible and the quiet time, as in the cooking and the cleaning and the gardening.
That's right. Well, just recently I was watching an ant struggling across several flagstones, carrying a load several times bigger than itself. And, the thoughts that came into my mind were perseverance and tenacity and strength. But God said to me, no, I'm showing you this to remind you to cast your burdens on me. You remember Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." And I think Psalm 68 says, "Praise be to the God who daily carries my burdens."
Yeah, no, it's lovely how God speaks to us. Recently, similar thing, God speaking to me about rocks of all things. We had that conversation where you'd been reminding me about how apparently as a child I made Mum carry half the beach home in the pushchair because I had a passion for stones. And I went for a walk up the hill and was just worshipping God and thanking him for the rocks and thinking, actually, I do really like stones, don't I? And God was reminding me of the fact that I'd asked him for a house built of stone, and I'd forgotten that. And the fact that unusually I have a table made of stone in my house, and that my husband's name means rock. And it started a whole conversation. God, what are you saying in this? And I've gone back to scriptures, and he's just been taking me on a journey of showing me what he's built into me, showing me about wisdom, showing me about where my security lies. And about sacrifice, and all of that just came about through a conversation, an observation.
It's a real journey of discovery.
Yeah, it is. And I remember too a discussion about why it is that we are aware of God in certain places, like for instance in church, or if we're at a conference, or a quiet time. And the point they made is not that God is more present in those places, but that we are. And that's exactly it. The challenge for me is to be present, is to expect to hear God in everything.
Yeah. Well, I suppose since lockdown and being unable to meet together for fellowship and for worship and as we did before, we've all had to find new ways to encourage one another, haven't we? And thankfully we have the Word of God, the Bible, and we can pray at all times. And Zoom and GoTo have been a terrific blessing in church services and meetings. But we found that right through this difficult season, God's been reminding us, and sometimes in very unusual ways, that He's to be found at all times, in all things and in all circumstances. We really want to continue in this, don't we? This being more mindful in the business of everyday life. And we would like to encourage you to encounter Him in the ordinary as well as the extraordinary. In the words of Brother Lawrence, think often on God.
We're going to read the first 4 verses from Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of His hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display knowledge.
They have no speech, they have no words, no sound is heard from them, yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their word is old.
Father, we just thank you for the many ways that you reveal yourself to us. Thank you that you are constantly pouring forth speech. And Father, we ask that you would keep us mindful of your voice today. Amen. That's just not going to happen.
Sorry.
What?
You've ruined the flow!
Yeah, so it wasn't really until I had kids, I had the twins.
No, twins.
No, me!
Me.
Mo! Oh, sorry. Sorry, I went too far. Sorry.
Keep that in.
Can we stop it and start again?